Hello, guys. So yeah, this will be our our first stream on this channel, and I picked the first topic to be covered on this on this first stream. It will be I'll be talking about Blender, and and this by the way will be like actually a recording for a video that will be published eventually on the channel, but now it will be like more loose. So I'll be like talking about Blender, and I will use this video and edit it later on and maybe add on it. And this will be like, you can think of it like the first video about Blender on the channel. And previously, like, we had other videos on the channel, and let me just double check. Okay, so yeah, let's get back to it. So previously we can like introduce other topics on here, and those were Maya and ZBrush, and hopefully in the future we'll add more. So some of these were in Arabic, so we will like in the future expect me to re-release them in English, because I think that's serve a more like broader audience. So I decided eventually to switch to you know to switch these videos to be in English, not in Arabic. And you can still like ask me in the comments your question in Arabic. And if I found that there is like a demand on Arabic videos, I'll be publishing, like I'll like bring like probably I'll bring them back, but I'm not like 100% sure if that's needed or not. And or maybe I'll make another channel, or maybe like move the English to a new channel. We'll see how that goes. And of course, like, we have like Marvel's Designer is one of my most popular, like the most popular video we have on the channel. So, and we will have more of that also too. So let's get started. So once you start with a Blender, the first thing you will be introduced with is this interface. Probably you saw like a welcome screen. Let me just close this and open Blender from scratch. So I'm just go ahead and open Blender. So the first thing you will get once you open Blender is this welcome screen. I'm using 5.0. I'm not sure if there's like an update that we had recently or not, but I'm using like the vanilla 5.0. And in this window, like, you have few things that you can do. We're not going to talk about it because I think most people will just click away, and you will be, dealing with the menus instead. So to talk about this, before we go ahead and talk about like many of the things that we have in Blender, let's just introduce few things. So Blender is a software that is heavily reliant on shortcut and hotkeys. So you want to kind of like get used to that and learn them as like learn as much as possible of these hotkeys. So up here we have the menus, right? And then we have the different interfaces, let's call them. Like, this is kind of like layout, this is modeling. So they will change depending on what you select. For example, if you go to sculpting, you will get like different layout. So for example, for UV and texture and so on, and some of them will display different things. For now, we will stick with the layout, and we'll be switching to different ones in the future. And next to here, just a second. So yeah, Yeah. So up here we have the object mode. We will talk about there is more than just object mode. I don't want to rush things. Just remember we have menus up here, then we have these different tabs. These will take us to different, user interfaces. They technically just like templates. Like you can technically recreate them yourself, and actually you can create your own by pressing on the plus here. Next, we have the outliner here, and here where you will see all of your objects that you have in your scene. And down here we have like the different settings for whatever you're working on in Blender. So it can be like depending on like what the like the tab or the like the section you're clicking on here, it could be related to your scene or your world, or like it could be also like it could be related to the object, and it could be related to the object. So one of the first thing one of the first thing to just get it, like one of the first thing to get it away is how to add an object, because you probably want to see something. And by the way, if you're using an older version of Blender, and even like this, I'm not sure if I change it in my preferences, there's a good chance that you might have a cube by default when you created the scene. I'm not sure if this is kind of changed in 5.0 or not, but if it wasn't, then you can go ahead and just delete it, and just just click on it and press delete, and you will delete it. We'll talk about the different ways of how to delete an object in your scene, but we'll get to that eventually. To add an object, there is two ways. There's the hotkey, like there's the hotkey way, and that will be by using Shift A. Once you press Shift A, you will get these menus. You'll get this like big menu, and each like one of these entries, not all of them, but many of them have like sub menus to them. So for us, like what we care about, at least for now, is meshes. So we go ahead and like select a cube. Once you select the cube, there it is. You got a cube in your scene. I could go ahead and delete that cube, and let's talk about that. And let's talk now about the other way of doing it. Would be add up here, and it's the same menu, but you can add a cube or a sphere or anything from within this menu, or anything from within this menu. Sorry if I repeat myself, that's because I want to have different takes. So once I'm editing the final video, I can, take the, because sometimes I'll stutter, sometimes I might, have like a, like a brain freeze or something like that. So there's this add here, which is the same thing. You can go ahead and use it, but I want you to get used to using the hotkeys, because, this is the Blender way. Especially if you're coming from another software, such as, Maya or 3ds Max, where, you will be more reliant on buttons on your interface. With a Blender, no, you will be using more often hotkeys and shortcuts. So after we added this object, if you want to delete the object, as I told you, you can press delete. That's one way. Or the other way would be by pressing X, right? Once you press X on your keyboard, you'll be asked whether you want to delete, which kind of like, I think using the X is much safer than pressing X, because it doesn't go ahead and right away delete your object. It will confirm it, so that if you did it by mistake, you can always, change your mind and, step back from it. I'll hit delete. So let's add again, add the cube again. But now let's talk about how we navigate, because I haven't introduced that yet. So to navigate in Blender, remember the hotkey that we will be using all the time, it will be, or like the button that we will be using all the time, it will be the middle mouse button. In this case, like most of us have a scroll wheel, and the scroll wheel itself is a button. So if you click it down, it will, activate the third, like the third button on your mouse. It will activate the third button on your mouse. So you want to click it, and now, you can rotate around your object. That's one of the actions. The second action would be, zooming in and out. That can be done in one of two ways. Scroll, scroll wheel, you will be zooming in and out. Or you could, again, hold control and middle mouse, click it, and you're zooming in and out. I prefer this because this allows you to have a smoother, zooming in and out. When you use the scroll wheel, it does have this increment, it does have this increment to it. So it's kind of like it jumps between like different levels. And finally, finally to move your object, hold Shift middle mouse, and now you move. We're not moving the object, we're kind of moving the camera, because if you look at the, like this red and green cross at the bottom, we actually, if I were to move the object, my object should move away from this. And in this case, no, we're just moving the entire, the entire board, but it's technically not moving the board. We're moving the camera that we're looking from the right and left, up and down. So this for navigation. Now let's talk about how we move an object, not like the camera, like we did just a second ago. How do we move the object? So to move the object, we press G, and that would be, for moving the object to a different place on your scene. And if I want to confirm this action, I will go ahead and click the left click button, on my mouse. So to confirm it, press the left key, or to confirm it, press the left click. Again, like this is sounded weird. So to confirm it, left click. To confirm the position, left click. And if I want it, like, I'll just go ahead and undo, and undo would be Control Z. So I will redo the action just to show you how to cancel. So I press G, now I'm moving my object, and if I want to cancel this action, I will right click. So to cancel it, I'll right click, and it will send my object back to the center of the universe. And of course, like if your object was already moved to another place, when you right click, it will send it to the previous position. And that's just because my object was created in the center. So that's why when I right clicked, it sent it back to the center. Now, talking about rotation, we hit R. So G for movement. And by the way, G, I think, come from the word grab. So G is abbreviation, or like the first letter from grab. Now R for rotation, which makes it easy to remember, at least for those few actions. R for rotation, and it allows me to rotate, right? And same thing, left click to confirm, and right click to cancel. And finally, S to scale in and out. S from scale, of course. I can scale in and out, or scale it up or down. And if I want to confirm it, I click. If I want to cancel it, I will, press the right click. And let's say as I said, let's say you confirmed it, but you don't like it, you can always undo your action. Now, going back to the G, so when I hit G, now it's moving kind of freely. Of course, not completely freely. We'll talk about that maybe in the future. But now it's kind of like moving randomly. Let's say like I'm moving up and down. But what if I want to restrict? Because usually when you do 3D, you usually do things and you require some precision. So you want to move it back and forth, in a certain values, in a certain directions. You don't want just to move things randomly. So say like we want to move my object along the x-axis or the y-axis or the z-axis. Now, if you want to know which axis is this, like the green one or the red one, just look at these up here, and those will tell you like what these are. So the red is x, and the green is y, and the blue is z. So try to remember those, and with time, they will become second nature. So if I hit G, now if I use one of these hotkeys, and they will be like X, Y, Z, we can constrict the movement on one of these axes. So if I hit X, I'm restricting the movement to the x-axis, and if I hit y, restricting it to the y, and if I hit z, I'm restricting it to the z. Another way also would be is moving like my object on one plane. What I mean by one plane, you have like in the 3D world, we have three planes. We have the XY plane, we have the XZ plane, and the ZY plane or the YZ plane. Again, doesn't matter which one, but we have those three planes. If we want to restrict the movement on one of these planes, remember you will use Shift and the letter that's outside the name. So if we want to go like restrict it to the XY, I'll hold Shift and then I press Z. Because again, if you think of it, that's like the only dimension that I don't want to move. So again, let's just do it. If I press G, then I hold Shift and Z. Now I'm moving, on the, on the horizon, like the flat horizontal plane that's kind of parallel to my ground, or actually it is my ground in this case. And if I like a position, I'll click and I will confirm it. Now, if I want to move it in another plane, we can use the same thing, G, then I press Shift and let's say Y. Now I'm, and you can see even like when I do this, it highlights the two axes that I'm working with. So G and Shift Z, you see like it highlighted the X and Y coordinates, like these lines become highlighted. And then if I go G and Shift X, and now this will be the plane that I'm moving on. Now, same thing with the rotation. If I hit R and then I select X, I will be rotating around the X. And if I do R, then Y, I'll be rotating around Y. And then if I hit R, then Z, I'll be rotating around Z. Now, going back to the G, and if you notice, like these shortcuts works for all of them, kinda. So we want to pay attention to this. So if I press G now and I move, one thing that I can do is I can hold Shift and that will make my movement slower, right? So now like Blender move with more precision. And this is kind of necessary sometimes because you want to be more precise with your movement. So you don't want it to, move very quickly, especially when you do something, for example, like scaling and rotation. You might want to be even more accurate with these things. So that's a good thing. If I go again G and if I hold Control, this will, allow me to jump one unit at a time, which is a good thing, because this way also, like, if like your unit down here in Blender, if you know what this represent, now you can move it, with an increment to these units. So say like in this case, like the ground, each unit down here is a meter. So if I hit G, then I hold Control, I'm jumping 1 meter at a time in this direction. I could go back and forth, up and down, and so on. And of course, we can do all of that with the, with the axes, by pressing G, then like selecting Y, for example. Then if I hold Control, I will be jumping 1 unit at a time. So if I do G, Z, I'll be jumping 1 unit upward at a time. Same thing would be for R. So if I go R and then I select an axis, like the top axis, like, the Z axis, if I hold Control, I'll be jumping 5 degrees at a time. If you look up here while I'm doing it, you'll see like the amount of the angle that I'm jumping. It will be 5 degrees at a time. And this way, for example, like say you want to kind of like rotate this 45 degrees, you'll keep like moving like each step 5 degrees until you reach the 45. So I'll just go ahead and just demonstrate that. R, then Z, then I hold Control, and see like this value. If you look up here, that's what I'm talking about. So I'll keep moving until I have 45 degrees, then I left click, then I left click, and I confirm it. Okay, we'll go ahead and undo. So same thing with the scale. If I hold Control, I'll be jumping like 0.1 of a unit, in this case will be 10 centimeter. So I'll be jumping 10 centimeter at a time while I'm scaling my object uniformly. Of course, like with the scaling, we did not talk about the different axes, but we can, you can see like we can scale it, disproportionately and we could, this way we can, reshape this cube into, into like a more of a rectangular shape instead of like just, a very equal, like equal-sided faces, which is a square. So the other thing that we can do to make even like this, because again, like we not talked about like how to do multiple things with these just three shortcuts, which is scale, move, rotate. And now if I go G, I want to also like show you another way of working with this. So while I'm doing this, I could just go ahead and type 1, 2, 3, and so on, and my object will be moving exactly that number that I'm typing. So G, if I go ahead and type 1, see, if I confirm it, it moved 1 unit in the x-axis. Now, of course, like it would be preferable to specify the direction, because like when I did it, I think it defaulted to the x-axis. I'm not sure exactly why it defaulted. Maybe if I was looking here, let's just try it and hit 1. No, it's always default to the x-axis if you didn't specify the axis, because I think the x is the first one of these axes. It's x, y, z. So now if I go G, and let's say I want to move it in the up direction, so I'll press Z after that, and then I will type, say, 5, and then enter, or left click. You don't need to either enter or left click to confirm. So now like this moved upward 5 units. Of course, you can type, a fraction, so it doesn't need to be a whole number. So it could be like 0.1, 0.5, and so on. And remember, when you do this, if I go ahead and do that, if I type 1, like don't think now if you type 2 you'll move another 2. No, like the numbers start accumulating. So we typed 1, if I type 2 this become 12, if I type 3 it will be 123. So if you didn't like the movement, like because I say I started with 1 and I want to move it like 4 instead of 1, I need to cancel the movement by right clicking and then like type G and the axis, select the axis Z, and then type the correct number again. You could also like backspace. So if I do G and then I move Z, and let's say I typed 5, but I didn't want to do 5. I wanted to do 3 unit. I can just backspace to cancel like the value and type the new value and then confirm. So this for the movement, scale, and rotation. Of course, there are more stuff that you could do. We will talk about them when the time is appropriate to talk about them, because some of them are related to the individual components. So it doesn't make sense to talk about them at the moment. Of course, one last thing that I haven't also mentioned or talked about is if you look at the very bottom, I'll just move my mouse, so I'll just cancel my movement. If you look down here at this line at the very bottom, you'll see like when I hit G, this will show different options. And it's kind of like a help, like it's showing you what options you have. So you can look at that, and this is not just when you use G or R. It's to be honest, it will be like it will always show up an option for any hotkey you use. It will show the different options you have available to you, and you could just this way like look at them and know which option you want to use, and this will help you first learn the software and also customize like the way how you use these actions and tools. So if I hit G, you can see that down here I have options. We talked about a lot of them, and you could just work with these things. Okay, so let's add another object, say like a sphere, right? I'll go Shift A and add a sphere. So now we have a cube and a sphere, and notice that every time we add an object, it will be added in the center, and because we moved this, but if we didn't move this, we can bring it back. This introduced also something that I did not talk about. What if I want to bring this object back to its original position? How can we do that? There is multiple ways to do it in Blender. So the one that I prefer the most is the one that allow me to use hotkeys, because again, that's the Blender way. That's kind of what differentiate Blender from other softwares is that it allows you, to do things much quicker. And when you use those hotkeys, you'll be much faster and quicker. So one way to change this, if you open this left panel here, see there's like there was like an arrow, small arrow. If I click it, it will open it. By the way, I use this like the visual like thingy in the interface. But if you don't want to do that, simply you can press N on your keyboard. This is the shortcut that allow you to bring this panel in, like bring it and hide it. So if you hit N, you show it, you hit N again, you hide it. Don't pay attention to some of what I have down here. I think some of these are, I have them because I have some plugins and, add-ons added to my, like to Blender. But probably like, I do believe like you'll have the item, you'll have the tool, and you have the view for sure. I'm not sure. I think animation also you have it, but edit down here, I'm pretty sure that this is, added, this is added functionality that I added to Blender. We could talk about those in a different, session or different tutorial. So let's go back to item, and you will see that up here, I have this value in the item. So you could technically, if you want to bring this back to its default position, just zero out these values. Of course, don't zero out the scale, because the scale by default is 1 by 1 by 1. So you want to keep it. Of course, you can change it if you want. So this is another way to change, your object, its position, its rotation, and its scale, other than using the hotkeys. So if you bring this, this panel here by pressing N, you can go to item and change those. Now, how do you change them? You click and type 0, right? But say that I don't want to use this. There's also a hotkey to reset these value here in this panel. And this hotkey works with not just this like these values, it works with all values in Blender. And that would be by hovering over this, field and press the backspace, right? And that will zero out the value in that field. And sometimes like it depend how it depends how these are made. Sometimes it allow you to like reset all of them, like all location XYZ at the same time. And sometimes depending like I think in this case, like if I do this and if I do backspace, I'll zero out, see like there it zeroed out all of them at once. So sometimes it will zero out one, and sometimes it will zero out all of them at once. Also, like here you have a lock, so we can lock these. So technically, like these, if we lock them out, they actually, I'm not gonna talk about the lock because I don't know exactly what it does. I thought it will like disable like this field, but it did not, or even link them, but it did not. By the way, you could highlight two values and change them at the same time. This way, like you do in it proportion, especially with like scaling. I would say, like if you say like you want to scale your object in the X and Y, but you don't want to scale it in the Z, so you could highlight both of them and then type 3, and that will give you, this shape. So I'll undo. Now we'll go from here to, because I want just to talk about like this, how do we reset? Let me just move it up there. And the other way would be to reset this. Remember we talked about these and we said some of these are related to your scene, some of them to your board, and some of them to your object. So if I go to where it says object and it's this square shape, if I click on it again, we get almost the same thing. If you look here, this is the same values, and we can use the same shortcuts or just, manually enter the values, and that's how we can do it. So this is like by using the, let's say like the interface. Like this is how we can do it using in the interface. So how do we do that using hotkeys? And as I said, like this is the Blender way. So how do you do that? You hold Alt and press the letter or the button that is corresponding to the action you want to reset. So in this case, if I want to reset the position, I'll hold Alt and G, and that will reset the position. If let's say I have a rotation, right, like something like this, and I want to reset the rotation, I hit Alt and R. So if I want to reset the if I want to reset the rotation, and same thing for the position, and same thing for the scale. So this is for those. Now, let me just think. So what do we need to talk about next? Yeah. So let's talk about now, of course, we will introduce other like other sections here. We'll introduce other like tabs later on when when they come. I don't want to kind of like explain everything right away, but we'll explain these things when the time comes for those to be explained. So let's not just jump right away and do explaining for everything. In your list here, in your outliner, you can, if you look here, by default we have one collection. We can double click and change its name, and it will show you how many objects you have in this list. So at the moment we have a camera and we have 2 objects, and if you look here, the camera have its own icon, and any mesh have this triangle, like a triangle that's pointing down. This is for a mesh, and of course if you have a curve, it will have a different icon, and so on. And if I collapse a collection, it will show you like what do you have, and even like the number of those. So in this collection we have two meshes, and we have a camera. And we can technically even just click on those, and you see if it's just one object, it will select it by default. And if you have multiple objects, it will show me a list, and I can go ahead and select it from here. So that's a nice thing. Also, we have, if we expand this collection, we have, whether it's on the collection level or on the object level, we have an eye next to it. So we can click on those eyes and hide these objects and make them invisible. We have also the camera. The camera is related to rendering. We'll talk about that. And we have even other things that's not active at the moment. We'll introduce them eventually. So how do you create a new collection? Right click here and add a new collection. Of course, in this case, like this collection was created in the selected collection. I can drag it away from it. So now it's not part of that collection. This is like its own independent collection. I can drag it and put it inside the collection back again. So this is like how you can kind of like move things in and out from each other. So for example, like say we want to move all like these meshes, like let's say I want to move those meshes and I want to put them in this collection. I'll just click and drag and put them there. So now we have this collection with the meshes and this collection with the camera. So I could call this like cam, right? And I could call this mesh or meshes, right? Let's call it cams. And that's how you kind of create it. The nice thing, if I were to delete the collection, it's not going to delete what's inside the collection. It's just going to delete the, it will just delete the collection itself. So it will just delete the collection. It's not going to delete what's inside of it. But the moment that I delete it, those will become, in the highest level, in the root level of my scene, right? So we can select those, and I could right click here and a new collection for the selected ones. So this is another way we, actually no, I thought it will just put them there. I thought it would put them there. So how do we also create like a collection without coming here, right click and doing that, right? Another way would be, if you have something selected, whether you have it selected or not, if you press M on your canvas here, it will allow you to create a collection, right? So if you hit like a new collection, and you could also select existing collections, by the way. So if I like select this one, it doesn't like no object selected because there wasn't anything in that collection. But if I select like the cameras, this allow me to create a new collection. If I have something selected, if I'm not wrong, and I press on new collection, that will create a collection for those, the one that's selected. Say that I want to move this one to another collection, like this object, I want to move it to another collection. So let's just go ahead and create another collection there. And do, I don't know why it's not doing that. Let's just create it here. I think we need to have a selection for it to create. So now let's just move this to another collection. While this is selected, if I go here and select one of those collections, it will move that object to the selected, collection. And technically, collection is just there to allow you to organize your scene. So technically, you don't need them, but it is a nice thing to have them to, organize your scene, and this allow you to hide, show things much faster. So this is one of the organizational tools within Blender. Now, we have not yet talked about anything related to the interface other than, introducing what these are and maybe some of the functionalities. Let's go ahead before we end this, like introduction to Blender, and let's talk about some of those options that we have. So at the beginning, you can see that this is like middle, like the middle thing here we have. It's, like your scene. So this is where your 3D objects. What if we want to introduce a new window? Like, what if I want to have two of them? You can just go at the top corner and wait until it becomes like, a crosshair icon. And if you click and drag, depending on the direction, if I click and drag to the right, it will add this, right? So now I have two windows. Each one of them is 3D, and they are independent, so don't worry, like you can look at these from different angles. I could also click here and drag down, and this allow me to even split this into more. And I could just go here and, split this too, right? And we can just also collapse these. So if I don't want one of them and I don't like it, I could just click. Of course, like if I drag now, this will do that. But if I didn't want to do this, what we could do is we could just see there, I deleted that one. So let me just recreate it. So if you click up here, see there, this allow me, once this arrow show up, be careful, like, because you need to be a little bit high. This allow you to delete it, because if you were like down here, this mean like you want to create, because it depends, like if I do that, this deleting, this creating a new one. So the thing is, just to kind of like explain it again, if you go here, if your cursor is kind of like just a little bit closer to this panel, if I click and I drag into its direction, it allows me to split it more, right? But if I were kind of like on this panel, like I'm on this panel, but I don't move in its direction to the opposite direction, it means I want to, get rid of the other one. So this way you kind of delete those, and I could just go here and delete that one, and so on, right? So if I didn't want to have any of those, we could just delete them, and now we don't have any of those. This is cool because this allow you, to create more windows. See there, like I could just do that, but then I, got rid of my tools. Let's just go ahead and introduce it. So that's a good thing. So now, what if I want to bring it, because I lost that one, the outliner, what I want to bring it? And actually, because also when we created those, now all of those are just a 3D viewport. Maybe I don't want to have only 3D viewport. The idea is to have like different cameras and different views, and even different, editors within your scene, or within Blender, to have different editors. We have not yet talked about editors, but like if you're working with textures or UV, it have a different, like it's not gonna be viewed in the 3D. You can like still look at it in 3D, but you're gonna go to a different editor. So it will be done using this like button at the top. So at the moment, this is kind of like showing this icon, and this kind of represents your 3D scene. But if I click on it, I have different options. So for example, we can bring the outliner. So if I select this one, now this becomes the outliner. And I can use this divider here. If I click on it, I could change its size. So if you want it. And if I want it to be here, I could just bring it here like it was, right? And if I don't want this now anymore, I'll just go ahead where like I'll show this, like crosshair, but I will be like leaning toward this because I want to kind of like delete that. So I'll be here and then move, and this how I delete it, or just collapse it or get rid of it. So after that, we can like go from here. We will talk about those eventually, don't worry, because here we have different modes now, so we can change to a different mode. But let's talk about quickly about these options down here, and then we will jump to maybe like talking about these different, and talk about like these here up here. You can see like there's a lot of things we need to cover, But of course, like we cannot cover everything in one session, so we'll have more sessions and we'll talk about all of them, hopefully. Especially if you like it. So don't forget, guys, to leave a like and also subscribe to help the channel grow. And just let me know in your comments here in live chat, or even in the in the comment section. It will be very helpful to the channel if I know what you like, what you want me to cover. Of course, like there's also going to be my own ideas, because I want also to force the channel into a certain direction, because I think it will be beneficial. But if I feel like these things are not getting interest from you guys, and again, like the whole purpose of this channel is to serve you as a watcher, so I'll try to like shape it up to be something in between, something that I think like information that I think you'll be happy to know, and it will be enjoyable to watch, and also covering the things that you may be struggling with or wanting to know or learn. So down here, yeah, so let me just remember. Yeah, we were talking about this one here. So let's talk about like starting from here, because this is interesting. So the first one is showing your object in wireframe. The second one will be showing it in this solid view, like you're seeing those in gray. And the one like next to it, this is material. We have not introduced material, we'll introduce it, and you kind of have more like better appreciation for this one. And then we have render. At the moment, like the render looks weird. That's because we don't have light, but we'll talk about that. So for now, so the only two options that really matters would be those two options. And we can, by the way, jump between those using shortcut, right? So if I press Shift Z, I'm jumping between wireframe and solid. And if I go to wireframe, there's also this. And this is kind of like back face culling, I guess. No, this is X-ray. So we could use this to show the X-ray. And I do believe the X-ray is Alt and Z. So if I hold Alt Z, this allows me to activate. So Shift Z is switching between this, right? Like Shift Z is switching between, like the wireframe and solid view. And then Alt Z is activating or deactivating the X-ray. Depending on whether we are in wireframe or solid view, it doesn't matter. This will be activated when we use Alt Z. And within this also, you can click on the drop down list here, and this will show you more options. We're not going to cover them for now, because I don't think this is very beneficial, because we have not yet covered a lot of these concepts, and it wouldn't make sense to cover them now. The only thing that I want to cover is, you see this, and this is kind of like viewed in this gray material or gray shade, like the gray shaded look. But if I want to change this, we can come up here to the studio. Here it says lighting. We can change this and select different, view by selecting those, right? And also, like, there are more interesting, like, let's say default material, it would be the matte cap. And here, like you have very interesting, these are not like actual materials. So this object is not like orange at the moment. All object will be orange when you select this one. This is just for preview while you're trying to work with your object, because technically if you want to kind of like make this look blue or green or whatever, you want to give each one of those its own separate material. And we'll talk about the material in the future, in the hopefully next session we'll talk about material. And finally we have flat. This kind of shows things in flat, so there's no shades at all. So again, if you feel like, if you find that like your object does not look correct, then just come check these and make sure that you're not selecting a weird thing, like you're not selecting a weird material or a weird shader. And so, and down here, like you have wireframe color. So I do believe this is if we have this, right? So we have wireframe color, right? So we can change this. So in the background, so wireframe color, we have object, we have random, and so we can change these. And I do believe we can also, I'm not sure if we can change these. This is like the highlight around your object, I do believe. So again, just play with them. They're not very important, to be honest. We can switch these, right? So I could just select this. Now this is kind of represented in white, and we can go with random, I'm not sure like what control the color there, but it gave us like in green. I'm not sure if it changes if we kind of like activate it or different, like if I were to open Blender on and off, if that would change or anything like that. And of course we have the background, there's theme, word, and custom. And here I think you can change, like your background color. So if you don't like, the gray, which is, I would say no, stick with the gray. It's the easiest thing on your eye, but of course, like say, like maybe you like dark, blackish, or you want it to this to be, like maybe you want it to be a little bit not too dark, maybe darker or maybe brighter gray. So this is up to you if you think this is better or not. And also like when you have X-ray activated, right? So if you have the X-ray activated, see there, like if we have X-ray activated, what we could do, we could change the value for the X-ray, how much this is transparent. So you could change it here. So we still like talking about only this little section and this button here. Next to this, we have these. These are, like overlays. I'm not going to cover all of them. We will cover those more in depth later on. But for example, like if you want to show the wireframe while you look at it, because here we're looking at the wireframe, right? So I'm looking at the wireframe while, like no shade, like you can see right through it. But if I wanted to see like the wireframe while I'm in this, like shading model or shading mode, you could come up here and just click, for example, on the wireframe down here. And then if you see the wireframe, you can change the opacity of the wireframe if you don't want it to be too intense. And also you can change the width. I do believe, actually, yeah, this is, I'm not sure what this is, but it changes, I do believe, the angle threshold for displaying edges. Face orientation, this is like for the face orientation. And in this case, because I think we don't have a UV, actually no, this is kind of like correct now, but I don't think we can show the face orientation at the moment. Also, like here we can turn on and off things that you don't want to see. For example, like let's just look at this. Where's the camera? There's the camera. Let's say I don't want to see the camera. We can come up here and select that I don't want to see, for example, cameras, right? Actually, no, this is not the place where you, here, like here you can tell it not to show like cameras. For example, say we don't want to see meshes. We don't want to see cameras. I could just, tell Blender that I don't want to see those things. And also here, what we can, turn on and off is like things like text. So if you see like the text here, we can hide it. We have like the 3D cursor. We haven't talked about it. This is like this thing, like the target thing down there is the 3D cursor. We can just show it on and off. And there's also annotation. At the moment, there's no annotation in my scenes if you have bones and whatnot. And you could like right away, without like coming here and activating those on and off, you could just click it while it's, without opening the list, and it will hide everything. Among the things that it's hidden is the grid. So that, telling me that if I look here, there's, yeah, there it is. So there's like the floor, there is the axis, right? I could hide the axis. If I want to show the Z axis, we can show it there, and so on. So, and also the floor. So you can come up here and change things. You can change the scale of your grid. So this makes it, smaller, right? So you look at like, because when it was 1, each unit was representing 1 meter. So if I go 0.01, now each unit representing, a centimeter, and so on. Let's just bring this back. And remember, backspace on anything in Blender, reset that value. I think except for here. Yeah, for here. You cannot change that with the backspace, so we need to do it manually. And yeah, so these are some of the things. So yeah, there's like the highlight. If you don't like the highlight, we can deactivate it. This kind of like showing you what object is selected, right? So if you don't want that highlight, you can deactivate it, and so on. And yeah, that's it for this, introduction. And we will later on, introduce more stuff in future sessions. So, keep watching these and keep an eye on my stream if you like it. And yeah, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to allow for this stream to, become more discoverable, and more people find out about it. And also when you do the like the not just the subscribe but the bell icon thingy, so the bell button, if you press it, this allow you to come like get notification about